jatkaa valloitusmatkojaan täällä kakkosella nyt näin lauantaisin kello 20.20. Seuraavan 7 jakson ajan hän tarjoilee herkkuja Kaukoidästä. Ensimmäisenä kohteena on Vietnam ja viikon kuluttua matkataan Bangkokiin.
Clive, seriously, look, for the last time. I mean, I have wonderful fun, you know. There's wonderful curries and rice dishes, and we can go fishing, we can go into the jungle, we can eat coconut milk. You can even train spot. They've still got steam trains in Malaysia. They have, honestly. Go on, Clive. No?
Alas, Clive wasn't going to be persuaded. He preferred to tend his goats in Somerset, while I, with a heavy heart, took the plane east. Actually, the Australian sparkling wine was a brilliant pick-me-up, and my spirits started to rise. Oh, and these plumptious little prawns were quite delicious. You'd have loved them, Clive, you really would. By the time I'd tasted the Shiraz, I was really looking forward to working with my new cameraman, Paul. Together, like Joseph Conrad's novel, we'll explore the mystery of the East. Oh yes, incidentally, the Chardonnay was quite drinkable. And somewhere, possibly over Afghanistan, I fell asleep dreaming of noodles and spicy curries. It's true to say that all my thoughts of Vietnam have been tempered by the newsreel footage of the 60s and 70s, the total utter futility and horror of war. So I wasn't prepared for this breathtaking ride through throngs of bicycles and mopeds with young people chattering like starlings. And, oh yes, a quick food note. Bread here, thanks to the gastronomic calling card of the French, is practically as important as rice. Anyway, I was happy and hungry when I arrived at the floating hotel on the Saigon River. I felt as I was about to take a gastronomic cruise in this steamy, noisy land. Normally, I'd make straight for the bar, but it was very nearly morning and I was ravenous, so I made a beeline for the kitchen to cook a classic Vietnamese dish for an early breakfast.
Vietnamese are industrious, hard-working, incredibly energetic people. But they couldn't sustain 12 hours in a paddy field or 12 hours in an industrial unit without something really good to line their stomach before they started the day. So one of the most essential things here in Vietnam is a great breakfast, a thing called a pho, which is in fact spelled P-H-O. We might call it pho, but it's a pho. And it's a soup of noodles. Now, what else goes into that soup would depend on your economic circumstances. You might put chicken, you might put meat, you might put fish. But as long as you've got noodles and the rich stock, you can't go wrong. So, no further delay, let's have a look at this wonderful stock. Okay, it's a beef stock made with lovely marrow bones, okay, water, cloves, star anise, a wonderful Chinese medicinal nut, black peppercorns, a burnt onion for flavouring and colour, white radish and ginger. Now, back up to me please, Paul. Because it's me, I'm having a luxurious version of it with some lovely fillet of beef, which you must cut in very, very, very thin slices. And to enable you to do this, it's a good idea to have the beef slightly frozen. And to assemble it, it's terribly simple. You put some pre-cooked noodles into the bowl, like so. Excuse me. Ooh, you then get some little pieces of beef, very thin as you can get them around the side of the bowl, like that. Then some onion, some spring onion, next. Then we pop in the piping hot beef stock over the whole thing. This, of course, cooks through the beef and makes the spring onions crunchy. Bean sprouts, chilies as many as you can stand, and some spring onions, and finally, a lovely little raw egg yolk. And that goes plop into there, like that.
Youngster, I think you'd like Vietnam. It reminds me of a powerful animal that's just beginning to wake up. In the early morning, you can feel a sort of frisson as the people make their way to work. I must say I feel lucky to be here now because there's a definite feeling of change in the air. A quick historical note here, Hector, as I whiz round on this brilliant cyclone. For centuries, this land was ruled by the Chinese. Then 100 or so years ago, the French arrived, and no matter how many baguettes they baked or boulevards they built, the Vietnamese didn't really care for them either. Anyway, Ho Chi Minh City, or Saigon as the locals still call it, is definitely on the move, and no doubt raising a few eyebrows in the capital Hanoi as it becomes more capitalistic as each day passes. Dangerous. And now to the Central Market, built, incidentally, by the French. Oh, this is wonderful! Look at the brilliant colours of these chickens. They've been pecking away eating rice and worms in the villages that circle the city. This market has the feel of a rich oil painting. Vegetables are high on the list of Vietnamese cuisine, and a great deal of them grow in water, like these fish leaves, slightly coarse like young ivy, but with a distinct taste of fish and very good for the digestion. Or these stalks of taro, finely sliced, are quite delicious. A great deal of the fish here comes from fresh water, and no matter how much salt you use, you can still taste the earthiness of the Saigon River. Preserved fish too is very popular. This took my eye, a surrealist impression of salted and dried fish, good enough to hang on any wall. But I'm here to cook a simple, refreshing dish that is eaten by millions of Vietnamese every day on practically every street corner. It's a sort of spicy soup with tender beef and vegetables.
If ever you find yourself in the middle of Ho Chi Minh City, the Red Square, or Piccadilly, and you're feeling really hungry, then this is the perfect snack for you. First of all, you need a thing called a steamboat, okay? And in your charcoal-fired steamboat, you need some beef stock, lightly spiced with some chilies. Okay, Paul, have you got that? Beef stock, lightly spiced with chilies. Then you need some okra, ladies' fingers cut into thin slices. Then you need the leaves of taro. That's the sweet potato leaves, finely sliced. Okay, back up to me, Paul, please. As you can see, we have a small audience with us today because it's the half term, you see, that's why they're all here. Then we have some Chinese mushrooms, a little bit of beef, and because we want this to be a sweet and sour dish, we have the sourness from the chilies and the sweetness from the pineapple. Okay, very important. This is a hot, sweet, sour dish. Then we have some little pieces of fillet of beef, any kind of beef would do, okay? And then the leaves from the cumin plant. Normally you have these as dried, back up to me please, Paul. Normally they're dried little pods which you put into your curries. This is the leaf from the actual herb tree itself. So, the first thing you do is put your vegetables into there, like that. Okay, into the hot stock. Then you put your cumin leaves in, like so. Then you put the mushrooms in. It's all very simple. Big close up here. Look at the fire we've got going in there. Lovely little charcoal fire. Then for the sweetness to go with the sour, the fresh pineapple. Then we put in our fresh beef. Take that off the edge there. And you pop the lid on and you simmer that for about 8 minutes, charcoal mark 2, and then I shall feed the 5,000.
It's not only architecture and baguettes the French left behind, but brilliant Citroën Light 15s, one of the great cars, I reckon. But I digress. For those of you who want to make this at home, fan your steamboat for a maximum heat for at least another 6 minutes. When you remove the lid, the smell of chilies and beef in this spicy sweet stock with the fresh vegetables will make you want to jump up and down with excitement. But is it ready?
And I think it is. I just have a little taste before I give it to everybody else. Sweet, sour, refreshing. Just the sort of thing you'd find here at any street-side stall, except they use the same broth throughout the day. So the later at night you have it, the richer and stronger the broth is. There we are. Would you like some? We'd like some. A little bit of that. Yeah. A little bit. Try some? No, want to try some? No. Want to try some? They're a trusting lot, aren't they? We come all this way, 8,000 miles, to cook snacks for people, and none of them want it. Try some? No? Try some? Go on.
Clearly he's not called Oliver Twist, but I'm sure he really liked it. He was just a bit camera shy, that's all. It can happen to anyone. And now, sorry Pythons, for something completely different. This is one of Saigon's famous snake restaurants. I thought I'd pop in just for a quiet beer. Not to eat, you understand, but to soak up the atmosphere. These, would you believe, are bats. Free range, of course, waiting to be roasted or stir-fried. Not for me, though. Anyway, as I said, this is a serious snake restaurant where cobra, which are plentiful in these parts, are selected by the customers just like the luckless lobster in the tank back home. But I'm not sure about this at all. I really am not. So, once the bloody deed is done, the snake is gutted, descaled and put into a pressure cooker to soften the flesh so the bones can be easily removed. If you want to do this at home, cook your cobra for at least 5 minutes, okay? Incidentally, the dog is not on the menu. Now, the cobra is cut up into handy bite-sized chunks, minus the bones, and is stir-fried with chili, ginger, garlic and lemongrass. Then a few sweet potatoes are added, and the dish is complete. Much loved by the Vietnamese and very nutritious, but not for me. While I beat a hasty retreat, let me leave you with a thought from the philosopher Wang Nai. Men eat the flesh of grass-fed and grain-fed animals, deer eat grass, centipedes find snakes tasty, and hawks and falcons relish mice. Of these 4, which knows how food ought to taste? All this heavy armament couldn't crush the fighting spirit of the North Vietnamese. While one side was fighting on a diet of doubt, fear, hamburgers and coke, the other had a clear conviction of victory, a daily cup of rice, snake or rat, and a handful of dried fish. As a cook, and not a military historian, that's where I think the battles were won. And now to my next cooking sketch, up the Saigon River. 20 years ago, this would have proved most difficult, not to say fatal. Why then, I hear you cry, didn't he do it 20 years ago? On a gentle river cruise, there's nothing like a slow-cooking, rich, hearty chicken and sweet potato curry, which is exactly what we're going to cook now. So let's have a look at the ingredients, Paul. Some lovely fillets of leg of chicken, okay. Some sweet potatoes just quickly deep-fried in oil. Some coconut milk. Some very finely chopped onion, garlic, curry powder. Now this is the ordinary, Paul, this is the ordinary curry powder that Mum used to use all those years ago when you were a kid, and she used to curry the remains of Sunday lunch on Mondays with currants and apples and grated coconut. It's that kind of curry powder, very ordinary. Also, we have some ground turmeric, some crushed dried chilies, some fresh chilies, some very finely chopped lemongrass, and a couple of bruised stalks of lemongrass. So, first things first, onions into the hot oil. Just to let them get a little bit brown and softened, and a little bit of the garlic, like so. And then a few pieces of chicken. Let them take a little bit of colour, and then we will add in our curry powder. Right, dried chilies go in next. This is quite a hot, beefy number. Some chopped lemongrass, all cooked down. The 2 big pieces of bruised lemongrass for extra flavour. Fresh chilies,
a little bit of sugar, a little bit of salt, and a little bit of pepper. And now we moisten that with some simple chicken stock. And let it simmer gently away for about 30 minutes or until the chicken is tender, and then we'll add the enriching coconut cream to finish the dish off.
Drifting down this fat, oily river, you feel a remarkable sense of detachment, as if you were abandoned and alone on the very edge of the earth. But behind the elephant palms are lots of little farms like this. The people of the south have always been farmers, and on this rich alluvial soil, anything grows, and home-fed pork is the prime meat of the area. You can conjure up a recipe by picking mangoes, bananas, and fresh green peppercorns from any garden. The houses are primitive and built to channel what breeze there is through every room. Oh yes, what a simple, clean and refreshing dish this is. Bean sprouts and green beans cooked lightly in peanut oil with garlic and ginger. An old saying here says that for each meal, however humble, be it congee or rice, remember that someone worked very hard to produce it. Anyway, towards the end of the cooking process, some bean curd is added, and the finished dish would cost pence, but it's soothing, satisfying, and totally right for this hot, sultry climate. Anyway, back to my curry. Now, phase 2, partly cooked sweet potatoes. They go in. Look at that, that is really good, isn't it? And then some thick coconut cream, and let that simmer for another 10 minutes so it thickens up a bit, and you will have an exquisite, invigorating, perfect for this very hot, humid climate. The sweetness, the sourness, and the hotness of it makes you feel really good. I let that cook away for another 15 minutes when a gust of wind blew the saucepan lid off, never to be seen again. My journey took me to a magical beach where the people still use the prehistoric coracle to unload their fish from the waiting trawlers. Before this trip, I thought these frail craft were the inventions of the Celts. They may be much older than that. This beach will always stay in my memory. For the hundreds of people who live here, it's their bathroom, their larder, and their marketplace. It's the very reason for their being. And still the legacy of the French lives on, with a little boy selling beignets or donuts for 10 dong a go. But the fish, this piping fresh red snapper, would bring tears to the eyes of London fishmongers. The prices were paltry, but nevertheless the haggling was as fierce as Billingsgate or Malaga. Some things never change. And they'll know fully well that saying of Confucius that says, give a man a fish and he lives for a day, teach a man to fish and he'll live forever. How true. The Vietnamese have a saying, since we all live in a troubled world, the brass is thoroughly mixed with the gold. I know exactly what that means, but I also know a piece of gold when I see it, and just off these busy boulevards is Madame Dai's restaurant, a haven. She's famous and chooses to speak French because she feels it's more sophisticated. And she told me how to make Vietnamese spring rolls, a classic dish.
Un petit leçon dans les arts culinaires. Il faut que je cuisine un tout petit peu maintenant.
Oui,
as I try to explain in my hesitant French, it is after all a cookery program, so I must actually start to prepare these things. So, spring rolls à la Floyd under the direction of Madame Dai. Ingredients, first of all, down here, please, Paul. Finely chopped green spring onions, very finely chopped fresh chicken breast, taro, which is a kind of sweet potato cut in very thin lamelles like that, some fresh crunched up crab meat, and some rice noodles. Those are the principal ingredients. Also, we have these very, very thin pieces of rice paper, okay? Very thin rice paper. So the first thing we have to do is make up our overall mixture. So we put some noodles into the bowl, like so, some onions in, some chicken in, some taro in, and some crab in, like so. A little bit of salt and pepper. And then we mix all that up till it's well amalgamated. Okay, so we assume that that's all ready and done. Next thing, with the damp cloth over here, we have to dampen down these little pieces of rice paper because they're stiff, and this makes them soft and pliable and enables you to make the spring roll. You take a little piece, like that. Now this is where you need delicate fingers and lots of patience. Back up to me a minute, please, Paul. Not something that I'm normally associated with. Normally, I'm into those heavy pots of things, bubbling away and stirring, getting mountains of heat out of them. But this is essence of Vietnamese cooking, is the gentleness of it, the subtlety of it, the sophistication of it, the freshness of it. So, here we go. First of all, fold over the little pieces into there like that. You'll need a really good close-up on this, Paul. My fingers are much bigger than the spring roll. Then fold it over and roll it up very, very tightly. Like so. I'll put it onto this plate for you. There's a little spring roll. Then, with some sugar and water melted down, you just paint each one in sugar and water and pop it, please, up for a few seconds in some hot fat.
30 seconds or so, depending on how hot your oil is, and these fabulous little things are done to a golden, crispy brown. Then, with a certain amount of trepidation, I serve them up to Madame Di in her elegant restaurant, a place of whispers. The spring rolls are traditionally served with fresh green leaves of mint, coriander, parsley, and fish leaves. It's all very light and extremely healthy. Then, the rolls are dunked in nok cham, a fish sauce with added chili, lime juice, ground peanuts, sugar, and strips of carrot, until they're properly coated. And then it's proof of the pudding time.
It's marvelous! Ah, fantastic! It's fantastic. It's better than my own chaya.
Oh,
really? Yeah. It's marvelous. Because you are not a Vietnamese, but you have, you cook it as an artist. Yes.
For my final cooking sketch, I made my way to a Vietnamese army camp. Where else, I hear you cry? To cook for a platoon of hungry soldiers. They were too busy playing volleyball to notice me, but I suspect they thought me totally mad cooking a lunch of pork that first had to be fried in hot oil, sugar and spring onions so that meat becomes brown and caramelized. Actually, this was a brilliant dish, and later it's served with prawns that are marinated for a few hours in fish sauce. Anyway, the temperature was over 100, and all I wanted was to ensure the dish worked and head for the shade and a cold beer.
Right, that's beautifully browned in the sugar and the oil, and also, of course, it gives it a unique flavour, sugar, garlic and shallots. Caramelised, absolutely delicious. Right, next phase is tipping in the coconut milk. Fresh coconut milk. And for this amount of meat, you need 4 coconuts. Now, at home, you might have difficulty in finding fresh green coconuts like this, so use coconut powdered milk, that's a bit of the peel, coconut powdered milk, and dilute it with water until it's very thin.
These soldiers here are actually medics who specialize in snake bites and live snakes. they make a serum taken from the poisonous fangs of deadly snakes like this king cobra. Not too many years ago, we in the West would regard these troops as the enemy, and because of the shortage of ammunition in the North, snakes were commonly used as an anti-personnel weapon. Carefully placed, they could be both demoralizing and devastating. I keep a respectful distance. However, now they're used to help not only the troops, but the local people who farm in the area. But this is a cookery program, so on with the next phase.
I wish you could smell this. It is unctuous and delicious. The sugar has caramelized around the pieces of meat, the coconut milk is reduced, and it's ready for the next phase. Have a quick look at that before I get on with it, please, Paul. Smashing. Fresh coconut milk reduced right down to a thick, lovely sauce. Now then, the prawn garnish. First of all, into this very hot fat, garlic and shallot. Okay. Oh, that is hot too. Just brown those for a second. And then, little by little, the prawns. As they turn pink and the garlic turns crunchy, you add a little bit of sugar, like so. That's fine, it was only a ball hitting me. You didn't even see that, did you? I was injured by an enemy by a ball, you know, depending on which side you were on. B team got me there, you see. I'm hoping the Reds will win. Sorry. And anyway, we put the a little bit of shrimp sauce in. Now, while they just simmer quickly away for the last few minutes, we chop up for the garnish some spring onions. Okay, some spring onions and some chilies. Nice hot chilies. And then, oh, that's the whiskey gone. Right, so we have that for the final garnish. Now then, Paul, regain your composure. I know that was a humorous interlude, but this is a serious cooking sketch. We are in Vietnam, and that's one of the coconuts gone. Never mind the marbles, it's the coconuts we're losing today. Then we shrimple the shrimples onto there, like so, across the top. We turn that off, and we strew these lovely condiments, these lovely spices and herbs over the top. And there we are, over the top in every sense of the word.
The lunch was a palpable hit. They loved it and insisted I immediately joined as a warrant officer, second class, Jungle Division. Sadly, I had to decline, but there was something else lurking that I knew had to be faced. Yes, not only do they make snake serum, but a potent cobra tonic.
Cheers, number one.
Down, sit down.
Wow!
Hector, I'm sorry I've been ignoring you, but I feel really excited about this country. As I said in my earlier postcards, I'm so pleased I came here now. Maybe in 2 years' time, the place would have been changed out of all recognition. Now you can clearly see the divider of wanton consumerism and an old rural pattern that was set down even before the Chinese ruled. I shall always think of this country as a long, thin snake. Treat it kindly and it will strengthen you. Tread on it and watch out.